Hi, and welcome to the first episode in a series about making the dream synthesizer. So, this is episode 0, and the reason I called it episode 0 is partly because I'm a programmer, and partly because in this episode we're not going to be doing any actual work on the synthesizer. We're just going to be introducing the project. So, what are the goals of this series? So the first goal is to document the design and process of making a DIY synthesizer. The second goal is to try and learn about how to make a synthesizer from scratch. I have a bit of experience in this, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but I'm also, relatively speaking, a newcomer to this. Crucially though, this series is not a step-by-step tutorial. So I won't be saying, solder this wire to this port. I'll just be giving a high-level overview. Having said that, though, I will be making things open source, and if people want to follow along, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and hopefully other people can replicate the synthesizer that I'm about to build. So, what background do I have in synthesizer making? So around about a year ago, I was living in France in a house, and a friend of a friend had this old Farfisa organ, and they didn't really have space for it because they were moving house, and they said, do you want to have it? And we said, sure. The thing is, it was in quite a rough state. Some of the switches weren't working, some of the keys would sort of play random notes when you hit them. The other problem was that it had no MIDI, so while it was kind of cool by itself, it had its own charm, it didn't really interact with the other instruments that we had, the other synthesizers that we had. So the plan we had, a friend and I, said, why don't we just add MIDI? So here's some pictures of us doing that. We opened the thing up and we wired all the keys into an Arduino. And here's some more pictures. So at its core, the synthesizer used an Arduino Mega as the sort of front end, and that was handling all of the inputs from the keys and the dials you could turn, and then it would send commands on a private channel to this STM32 Blackpill board, and this was the sort of back end, and this is what handled all the actual digital synthesis and sound. So I'm going to play you a short video of this synth in action. So you can watch that now. Okay, so now you've seen the organ in action. So I ended up having quite a few features. We had a MIDI output, of course, which was the original plan. But then we sort of feature creeped the whole thing and added more and more stuff. So we had an arpeggiator, which you saw in the video. We had a sequencer, which I didn't show in the video, but you have to trust me that that worked. And then it had a subtractive synthesizer engine, which used different types of waveforms with a filter and an envelope and all that good stuff. So let's start with the design process for this new synthesizer. We're going to start high level with just some basic abstract ideas, and then as we kind of build these ideas, we can narrow it down and finally have a form factor and a basic outline of what it might look like. So we're going to start with some inspiration. What are some existing synthesizers that inspire me and that I really like? So this is one that I had found on the internet. Now, mind you, I've never actually heard this thing being played, but I really like the aesthetic of it, the vibe of it, the fact that it's got its own monitor, it's got a keyboard attached to it, which I think is really cool. It sort of has this really retro futuristic vibe. I mean, look at this is really cool. And I want my synthesizer to have a sort of retro vibe. I like the idea of all the possibilities that can come with sort of a programmable almost synthesizer. Of course, if you're talking about the synth that does everything, you'd be remiss to not mention the OP1, which is probably the most famous sort of all-in-one package for a synthesizer. I love this one as well. I don't have one because they're really expensive, but I have seen videos of it. I like the compact design, is really cool, and the screen on it is nice. And it also is that all-in-one synth. It can do layers, it can do multiple instruments at the same time, and it can do loops, so it's all this sort of all-in-one package. The next synth that I really like is of course the one that I have here, which is the Yamaha. I like the screen on this one. It has a really cool editing process, which I think is really visual. A lot of synths you're just editing numbers, which is quite abstract, but here it will like show you the envelope, it will show you the algorithms that you use when you're programming, which I think is a nice experience. So with those sort of inspirational synths in mind, we need to outline some key parameters for our synth. So I think from those inspirations you can sort of gather what I want to make, which is something that has a sort of retro style, something that's portable, and also something that has a lot of sonic possibilities where you can have drums, you could have bass, you could have all of these things all in one package. And I also like the idea that I'm going to build something that can be infinitely expanded. So, you know, if I have an idea, I can just keep adding features forever and ever. So, what is this dream synthesizer going to look like? So what I'm thinking is, what if we take an old keyboard like this and turn it into a portable synthesizer? What we're going to do is we're going to remove these keys and we're going to put a screen there so you can edit things, and then the rest we're pretty much going to leave untouched. And there's a lot of things I really like about this design. First of all, you can see here we've got about 4 octaves worth of keys, and that can be for playing, but also because it's a keyboard, we have a lot of things available to us for editing and control. So crucially, these keys don't have to stay as the notes. You could, for example, press the F2 key and maybe that would bring you into the editor, in which case you could sort of type in parameters like that, or maybe use the numpad. And also, because there's so many keys, we can make editing really fast and efficient, right? So you've got all these classic key binds that everyone uses, like control paste. You've got you know, shift or this. So maybe we could also have that shift up an octave, so you could be playing and then you press the shift button and it goes up an octave. So I really like this idea because, first of all, we have all of the hardware pretty much already made. It's also going to be really expandable. You know, if we added new features, there's so many buttons to choose from. You know, you could put, I don't know, the sequencer on the Windows button or whatever, or you could use these buttons over here. And I can sort of imagine this project just going on forever and ever as I add on new modes and new ideas to the keyboard. So now that we have the basic form of the keyboard, let's look at some more detailed design specs. So first of all, I want to have MIDI input and output, and that's mainly going to go on the back here. So what I'm going to do is going to add a sort of metal box here to house all the electronics and the new ports that I'm going to be adding to this thing. Next, I want to have a powerful synth engine. So I'm going to have a subtractive synthesis, which is what I had programmed for the organ, so I know I can do that. And then I also want to add the frequency modulation synthesizer, similar to what's in my Yamaha that I was showing earlier. Next, I want to have a sampler, and this is mainly just going to be for drums and other things, but maybe you could also sample waveforms and sort of play them melodically, we'll see. Next, I want to have a sequencer, which is going to sort of allow you to program, hopefully, more than 64 steps, but have a whole song programmed into the synthesizer that it could just play automatically, and then you could also layer that with more and more tracks. It'd be cool as well to be able to save and load projects onto some kind of SD card so that you could have a complete song on the thing and save that. Lastly, we're going to have an arpeggiator, and that's going to be similar to the other one, where you could just sort of hold a bunch of keys and it will play it automatically, and that's kind of fun. And you can do a lot of things with even a basic arpeggiator. So here are some nice to have requirements. These are optional, maybe I'll do them, maybe I won't. One thing that I thought would be really cool is if you could have an audio input, say 4 audio inputs, and be able to mix things in the keyboard and then have it all go into one channel, so I could mix them all into a master track. And also have this sort of be the central piece of any audio setup. So I've got all these synthesizers I was showing you earlier, and it'd be cool to be able to all connect them to this, and this have be this sort of central thing controlling everything, and then also recording all of the audio. I was also thinking about some new exotic types of synthesis. So one of the ideas I had was this thing I've always wanted to try, which is I thought of as called polynomial synthesis. And the idea with that is that we sort of, instead of changing frequency and all these other parameters, we just change parameters of a polynomial and then play that as a waveform. I think you could get some quite interesting sounds out of that. The other one would be a wavetable synthesis. That's always kind of cool, but I don't know if I'll be able to actually program that. The other thing that I thought would be really exciting is, because this is a keyboard, we can maybe create a scripting language that we put into the keyboard. And what you could then do is, because it's a keyboard, you can just program things directly here. And with that, you could have a sort of generative music. So you could have a script that, for example, plays a note every time the step counter reaches a prime number or something like that. And so you could have this sort of infinitely evolving piece of music. And you could just sort of program it here instead of having to program it on the computer and send it to a synthesizer. Everything could just be done here. And you could hook up the programming language to hopefully not just generate notes, but also to modulate parameters. So maybe we have a script that says, oh, every time you press this, you know, the kick drum plays a little bit louder, or, you know, you could have some kind of automatic dusking. You could basically do anything if we make a scripting language inside of the keyboard. So that's it for this video, and in the next video we should hopefully start getting into actually building the thing and designing the architecture, making decisions on what microcontrollers to get, how they're going to be wired up, and also I want to get started on actually getting the input from this keyboard into some kind of Arduino, or as you'll see, maybe a bit more powerful microcontroller, and so we can sort of process these inputs. But that's all for now, so thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.